Howdy. So we all know that sleep is important, and it's actually so important that we end up shaping our schedule around it. That how much we sleep and when we sleep actually dictates how much time we have awake and what we do when we're awake. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep routines as part of sleep hygiene. And hygiene just means good health. So thinking about those practices that might contribute to good sleep health. While I'll offer some suggestions herein, I encourage you just to experiment with things. See what works for you and hold on to that. And if it doesn't work, then just disregard it. Maybe it'll be helpful in the future. So the first thing about routines is really kind of identifying how much sleep you need at night. We would like to think that everyone has a certain prescribed amount and it's just going to be consistent for everyone, but that's just not the case. It's more so that we all have unique physiological needs. And while we have a general rule of thumb of adults needing about 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night, what you need is going to be unique to your experiences. And so experiment a little bit. Once you identify how much sleep you need at night in order to feel rested and prepared to take on the day, we then need to consider how much time we need to get ready for bed and also how much time we need to get out of bed. And then that gives us a sense of how large a space this requires in our schedule. The ways that we can tweak this then as we start to get into a sleep routine is identifying a bedtime and a wake-up time that accounts for how much sleep we need. Ideally, that bedtime and that wake-up time can be something that's maintained consistently, because once we get into a sleep routine, we start to cue to our bodies either get ready for bed, so start to slow down and start to get ready for sleep, or to wake up, so start to physiologically become aroused and alert. We find that once we get into that routine, it's much easier to fall asleep and to wake up. If you've ever doubted the importance of a sleep routine, all you have to do is just travel to a different time zone. Even 1 hour difference can be significant in terms of making us sleepy at different times or feeling more alert at different times. I mean, that's what jet lag is all about. Now, just because we have a consistent bedtime and wake up time doesn't mean that we can't break those rules. It might be that we sleep in a little bit on Sunday morning or stay up a little bit longer on Friday night. But we want to try to maintain that schedule as consistently as possible. More days, or I guess more nights and more mornings than not. Another thing to consider about our routine is, well, what else we want to do with our lives. That this is an invitation that we give ourselves to think about how we want to structure and use our time. When we become more intentional about going to sleep and waking up, we then can become more intentional about how we use the rest of our time in the day. So as a personal anecdote, I used to wake up essentially to go to my job. I would wake up and I would quickly get ready to go. I would get out the door and I'd get to my job as soon as possible. It just kind of felt like that's what I was supposed to do. But I found that I was feeling really anxious because everything revolved around me getting to my job, about getting my job done. And so I felt like I was waking up just to go to my job. And as much as I enjoy my job or jobs, I don't want that to be the only thing I do in a day. Really, I don't want it to guide or dictate me living my life. And so that morning time became really important for me to identify activities that I wanted to do then, that I wanted to wake up and be a part of. And so in that morning time, I started to put things like exercise, breakfast, playing the drums, and getting ready for the day. That might be getting cleaned up, taking a shower, and listening to music while doing that. This time became really important to me because I felt like I was waking up into my life instead of just waking up into my job. And that morning routine then makes me feel like I'm living my life, that I'm waking up into my life. And while it takes a little bit more time, having that consistent wake-up time has brought about a lot more opportunities to use that time intentionally. And it's kind of funny because the time that I start my job today is the same time that I started my job in the past. It's just that now I'm living my life before I go to my job. And my job is just one activity that I do in a day full of activities. And so I encourage you to think about that routine and that wake-up time as giving yourself some space before you start your job to live a little bit of your life. What are the things that you would want to insert in that space? Would it be going for a walk, calling a friend, though not too early, engaging with media, a book, exercise, making a fancy breakfast, spending time with family, whatever it may be, thinking about how you want to use that time as a way to wake up into your life. And that becomes a part of scheduling, which is a part of our sleep routine. So too, we want to think about our bedtime routine. What are we doing before bed? And there are a number of different facets that we want to consider when we're creating a bedtime routine. Now, ideally, we want to start getting prepared for sleep, going through that nighttime routine about 30 to 45 minutes before we actually get into bed. And again, this is an opportunity for us to express something about who we are and how we want to live our lives. That this bedtime routine can include things that are really focused on us and our well-being. This is a time where ideally we want to turn off screens, put our phones to the side, put our computers to the side. We want to be really thoughtful about the type of media that we might consume at that time. While we may want to, for example, click into our email just to check things before we go to sleep, that could also be very activating and pull us into work world, to pull us into a cognitive process that's thinking about work, that maybe feels anxious. And while that might not happen every night, it's important to weigh that as a possible outcome. Personally, sometimes I'll be about to open my email app when I'm getting ready for bed, just because I get a little habituated to doing that during the day. And as I'm about to click on it, I'll check myself, like, oh, hey Travis, are you prepared to deal with the consequences of clicking this? Because once you open this, you might become really upset. You might become activated. And it doesn't happen every time, but it could happen this time. And I'm usually pretty quick to put my phone down after that, to think, oh gosh, no, I don't want to check right now. I want to leave it alone, and I want to explore other things now. We want to turn off screens in order to cue our bodies to start to slow down. We might pick up a book instead, because the printed word on paper or on special tablets is less activating to us physiologically. It's also a great time to journal and to reflect on the day. Maybe pulling out a gratitude list. What happened today that we're grateful for? And sometimes it's just a nice cup of coffee. But it's that time of slowing down, turning off the screens, disconnecting, starting to maybe journal, to read, to get cleaned up, to prepare ourselves for bed. That type of routine becomes really important in order to cue our bodies that we are going to sleep. And as we start to get into that routine and we have that consistent bedtime, we're then falling asleep a lot faster. We're then sleeping through the night, and we're waking up and we're getting out of bed because we're not getting out of bed just to go to our job. We're getting out of our beds to live our lives. So think about how you might structure your schedule around your sleep, because in structuring that, we're expressing some sort of value, some sort of preference, and really identifying how we want to live our lives. And with that, I wish you well in setting up your sleep schedule. I hope you experiment with it a little bit. And just because you get something that kind of works doesn't mean that it's 100%. Keep practicing at it, keep tweaking it. It's your life. And so live it. Be well.